Hello there. Right. Hello, this is Damian again from Heat Recruitment, and I'm very pleased to introduce Denis Dennehy from FD Intelligence. He will be running this webinar. It's one of a series that we're hoping to progress every 3 months or so. And this is the first one in and around the benefits of robotic process automation. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Denis.
Thank you very much, Damian. I'm going to share my screen because I've got a presentation obviously to go through, so bear with me. Okay, so hopefully you can all see this presentation. I'd like to thank Damian and Heat for the invite and for inviting me along. Skip on a bit more then. So this presentation is RPA, everything you wanted to know but were afraid to ask, specifically aimed at anyone new to RPA or been doing it for a short period of time and maybe not getting the benefit or that they wanted out of it. So hopefully this presentation will help you. So you've already heard my name, so call me Den if you ever meet me. I've been involved in RPA for 18 years, focusing on how to do this successfully, how to get started successfully, and how to scale RPA or robotic process automation. The agenda we've got for you here is, for those of you new to robotic process automation, what is RPA? I'm going to show a slide and discuss why some sectors seem to have been left behind. So robotic process automation has been around, well, like I said, I've been doing it for 18 years. So it's been around a long time, but some sectors seem to be quite new to it. So why that might be the case. I'm going to tell you how to get started, a few big tips of how to get started in RPA. And then I'm going to discuss a success playbook for how to scale RPA in your organization, how to be truly transformative. And obviously, I work for FD Intelligence. I'll end with a little pitch for you, tell you a bit more about who we are. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll have time for a question and answer. So if you've got any questions, put them in the chat as we go, and we'll get through as many as we can of them at the end of the session. So before I say what RPA is, I'd like to maybe set the scene of why it's important today. And the reason it's important today is we're living in a workforce crisis in 2023. And the organisations I'm speaking to are telling me there's two main issues that we need to counter in the workforce. One, and a really big one for the accountancy and legal profession that I'm speaking to a lot at the moment, is recruitment and retention. It's become a real crisis. The top two quotes you see here in front of you is from Legal Futures and the magazine The Legal Profession. It's telling, according to 63% of law firms, the biggest obstacle to growth was recruitment. In hospitality, similar story, job vacancies at the highest level since records began, and the same in the accountancy sector. I spoke to a manager in hospitality a few weeks back, and she was telling me that there's now 11 people in her team rather than 20, not through choice. And it's putting real pressure on the customer interactions they can do and the level of care they can give their customers, and it's putting real stress on people within the organisation. So that's a real problem we've got today. The other main issue I am hearing a lot about is the issue of productivity in our workforce. So we've got a real problem at the moment where wages are increasing quite rapidly because of inflation, but productivity is stagnant. It's not moving at all. So that we're getting a growing gap between how much we're paying our staff and the productivity we're getting out of them. And that's causing a real problem in terms of what we can do with our people and the bang for the buck we get for the money we spend as businesses. So they're two major issues that I'm hearing a lot about. So for me, the big answer for this can be robotic process automation. So let's discuss exactly what RPA is. So to set the scene, imagine you have a workforce that includes teams of robots that can work 24/7, that are accurate, that can, extremely highly productive. And what that gives you is happier employees. And the reason they're happier is all the boring, mundane swivel chair work that they used to do and they used to hate is now done by these robot teammates they've got. And your employees are freed up to be more value focused on what's important for your organization. They're more focused on customer experience. And because you're always meeting your customer SLAs and you're better engaged with your customers, you have happier customers. RPA also gives you a real competitive advantage. What we're seeing in the accountancy sector at the moment, where where FD Intelligence has had a lot of focus over the last 2 years, is the accountancy firms that are engaged with us are really reducing their costs. And the way I see this going is you're either doing robotic process automation and reducing your costs, or you're in a bad position because your competitors are doing this far cheaper than you. So RPA for me is really the answer. So what is it in reality? So when we talk about robotic process automation, FD Intelligence, we like to use the phrase do, think, see. And do is the hands of the robot, if you like. So do is the traditional RPA, which is teaching a robot through a set of rules to take data from one system and put it in the other, and do all those repetitive, easy to do but boring processes. And in that little window there, if you squint and look closely, you'll see an RPA robot working an onboarding payroll process. Gets it right every time. The problem with that traditional RPA was that there was limits of what the robot could do, and there was a lot of processes which would maybe say, actually, maybe that's not ideal for RPA. But actually, that's changing now through intelligent automation. So the robot can also see and think. So see is computer vision. With computer vision, the robot can automate more applications than it used to be able to, but it can also interact and get data out of structured data like invoices, forms that people fill in. So a great example of that is FDI. We're automating personal tax processing for a number of big accountancy firms. What that means is we can take in gift receipts, bank statements, pension statements, investment portfolios, P60s, P45s. We can get data from multiple sources, and we can extract the data, and then we can pass it to the RPA robot, and who can do all the data entry. So we're able to do more. The think is the brain of the robot that's evolving over time. So technology like ChatGPT allows us to take free text input from emails, get the data we want out of that, and use that with the RPA robot. I know years ago a customer of mine used Google AI to be able to identify a passport in an onboarding process for customers and do some validation checks on that. So AI is helping us to do more as well. So these are the three main components, but there's another one that's very important as well when I talk about robotic process automation, and that is human in the loop. So human in the loop is the final important component, and it's because a robot is part of your team once you have an RPA robot. It's not a standalone thing. It needs humans to do so much. So what we are needed for are to come up with the ideas for the robots, and I'll speak about a great example of ideation in a moment. What will the robots do? Process improvement. So often a business process that you have at the moment might not be ideal for your software robots. You might need to standardize it, make sure everyone's working the process in the same way so that you can train the robot, or you might need to access your systems in a different way. There's handoffs that you can design in your solutions between where the robots and the humans truly collaborate. A great example of that might be an audit process where the robot does loads of collections of data from multiple systems, then passes it to the human who might make some decisions, who might then pass it back to a robot to complete the process. So that kind of collaboration is kind of key, and we're seeing that more and more in intelligent automation. Machine learning, we need humans to help train our robots. So that document understanding example I gave on the previous slide, where we're taking all these documents in, we need humans to help the robots improve and to be trained. So what will happen is, if taking data out of a P60, the robot can't understand a field or isn't 100% sure, it'll pass that to a human who will be able to validate that field, and then the process will continue, or the automation will continue, and the robot will learn from that correction. And finally, humans are needed for robot exceptions. So robots will never work 100% of cases all the time. If it gets confused because there's an unknown pop-up on a system or something it doesn't understand, it will park that case, after working what it can, and it will pass it on to a human to complete the work. So that human robot collaboration, as though they're in part of the same team, is the final key part of what RPA is. So now you know what it is. Why are some sectors not doing RPA? So I'll frame this by saying, when I moved to FD Intelligence, who were predominantly in the accountancy and hospitality sectors, I was surprised in the conversations I had with prospects and some people in those industries at how little was known about robotic process automation. I come from a background from an RPA vendor, one of the top 3. And in my mind, all my feed on social media was all RPA. I thought everyone knew about RPA. So to go into a whole sector where it was very little known or just starting out was a real surprise to me. And what I realized is that's kind of quite common. The reasons for this, in my mind, are fourfold. One is the RPA vendors themselves, the UiPath, Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere, and the others. They've been concentrating for many years on the big hitting industries with high number of transactions. Banking, finance, telecom, utility companies. The reason they've done that is obvious. It's where the most robots are needed. So the most marketing, most investment has gone into those sectors, and many sectors have been kind of neglected by them over the years. The second reason some of these sectors have been left behind is that they tend to be smaller enterprises. A big bank might have 60,000 people. These are far smaller. And what the data has shown me when I've looked at customer data in RPA vendors is that small, medium enterprises tend to grow very slowly their number of licenses compared to the size of the company. They tend to go from one business case at a time. And that slow plateaued chart, rather than going quickly at the start, means that they run out of steam, if you like. What we find is after 2 years or so of doing RPA very slowly, one business case at a time, the excitement leaves. And it's very difficult then to re-accelerate the curve. The third main reason that some sectors have been left behind is in some companies, the sectors where it tends to be slightly smaller organizations, the time to ROI is quite longer. So, in a bank, well, in a utility company, I once automated a process that was 30 FTE in one business process. So the ROI was in 3 months. If you're automating a process where it's only half an FTE, the RPA robot costs the same, but the actual number of people you're freeing up is far less. So the time for ROI is far longer. Business case is harder. That means that these industries with lower headcounts need to be far more creative in their use of RPA. They need to be far more intelligent in their business case and focus on things like retention and customer satisfaction, as well as just the replacement of people. The final key thing was that I think will make a difference and has made a difference in the past is industry-specific RPA specialists, people that know the industry and the sector, working with RPA specialists to really bring an insider knowledge of industries. That is key, and we've seen that in the accountancy sector with the company I work for. We've seen that in the NHS and other sectors where the people from the inside have actually made a massive difference to the sector, and now they're taking off in their use of RPA. So they're the main reasons I think that some sectors have maybe been left behind, and there's still greenfield sites out there for the RPA industry specialists to go for. So how do you get started in RPA? So I'll give you a few tips now that I like to give. The first one is expect a journey. This slide's an old one. I've been showing it for many years. It basically tells you that aim for the big tower at the far right over there. If you want to have these robots as a transformative part of your organization, if you truly want to have those teams of robots doing amazing work for you and freeing up your people, it's a journey to get there. So that kind of idea of one business case at a time and eventually you'll get there. It's not true. You need to strategically think about what your future work is in your organization and plan the journey to get there. And that's kind of what I wanted to say with this slide. So expect the long term. Second bit of advice, and it seems really obvious, is to go for the low-hanging fruit first. Go for the easy, simple processes first to automate. And you might wonder, why is he telling me the obvious? The reason I'm telling you the obvious is I've known loads of examples over the years where they've reached for the high difficult to reach fruit as the first business processes to automate. The reason companies tend to do that is because it might have the biggest ROI, the most people working it, but it might also be the most complex and difficult thing to automate. If you start with something difficult and you've never done something before, you're kind of setting yourself up for a fall. And if you don't have early successes and quick early successes, you're going to make your journey far harder in future. So go for really low complexity, swivel chair, easy stuff, even if the ROI is less. Get those early wins, get some early showcases that you can demo to the rest of your company to show what this is, and you'll get off to the best possible start. So that's one of my main thing, low-hanging fruit, but keep that in mind. The other thing you need to do from an early start is think outside the box. And this is one of my favorite quotes in RPA after all the years I've been working on it. And it's from a VP at a Canadian bank. If I gave you 5 additional team members tomorrow, 5 additional employees, what additional work would you do that you do not have the capacity to do today? What work would make our customers happier? What would reduce risks to our business? What would bring in more revenue? So rather than thinking about what you do today, also think about what you could be doing if I just gave you 5 robots, if I gave you more staff. What would you do today that you're not currently doing that would make your business more successful? And this phrase, this way of thinking is something we usually only see in the most mature RPA customers that have already made it. But if you have this way of thinking from the start, your business cases will be far easier to come up with and to find. If you target happier customers, if you target reducing risk in your business, you'll be a more successful business and you'll find more for these robots to do. So think outside the box is one of my key recommendations. A final key getting started recommendations, and it does look like a pitch this, I'll hold my hands up, is to find a best-in-class partner to start your journey with. I've got FE Intelligence there. Other partners are available, obviously. An injection of experience at the start is vital. Why would you want to learn the hard lessons the hard way by making those mistakes that we've all made in the past that have been doing it a long time, rather than inject some experience at the start to get you those early successes that are so vital? So best-in-class partner. How do you find a best-in-class partner? Make sure they're certified with the RPA vendor. Make sure all the staff they're giving you are certified and have passed the relevant exams. Check the case studies out. Make sure they've done good things in the past. Ask for a customer reference. Ask to speak to a past customer of theirs to find out from the horse's mouth, so it were, what the journey was like. You'd be surprised how many customers I've come across in my career where they had no partner and really struggled, or they had a partner that did really badly for them. And when you talk to them, they didn't do the most basic checks, and they end up with off-the-bench developers, never done RPA before. They went for cheap resources abroad. Do your homework and get a really good partner, and that will kind of give you the best possible start. So how do you scale this? So you've had a good start, but how do you really change your organization? And that's what these next quick slides are about. So at FD Intelligence, we've created what we call our automation success playbook. I'm just going to briefly mention the main areas, but then I'm going to dive into 2 because we're pushed for time on this talk. So digital strategy, make sure you've got a vision and a future work vision in place and know the journey to get there. Educate your people. This is one of the important ones. Make sure your people are on board with this. If there's any fear of redundancy, head it straight on. People that are fearful will end up being blockers. So education is key. Delivery methodology. If you deliver poor quality robots, Without quality gates, it'll be like spinning plates, and the more robot automations you add, the harder it will be. So, following best practices is really important. IT and security, this is a well-written about one in the RPA sector. You need to engage IT early, make sure your robots are secure, otherwise that will become a blocker later on. Managing change, for me, this is the most important one. So for me, an RPA project isn't really a technology project. You might balk at that, but in reality, it's a change project. So managing change is key, and I've got a couple of slides on that. And finally, operating the robots. Once you've created these robots and they're running, how do you keep them operating well? How do you make sure they're running when they should? They're meeting SLAs? Do you have contingency plans if there's a problem? Disaster recovery if a robot goes down? So operation is key as well. So these are the kind of areas you need to think about. To dive into a couple, in terms of managing change, a very simple slide this, but you need to manage a project of change in your organization, not just delivering the robots. You've got a current operating model that is processes, people, and technology. You've got a future state where you've now got people, process, technology, and intelligent automation, these robots. So you've got to change your organization for a new way of thinking. And so you've almost got like a side project in your RPA. One for your early delivery of your first projects. Second, to set you up for success and scale. The second part of change you need to think about is robots are easy to break. What I'll say with this slide is quite simple. If your organization already isn't good at change and managing change, you are really going to struggle with RPA. The one thing you need to focus on is improving at how you manage change to be successful at RPA. So the examples this slide gives are quite obvious. If a system changes and it's not managed well, your robot's going to break. If you've got a Microsoft Windows update that changes the Edge platform in a way that a button changes, your robot's going to break. Change and managing it is a key thing. There's all kinds of online courses about managing change. They're just as important as courses in RPA. So that's a real focus area. And the final one is, out of all that automation success playbook, is include your people. And this slide is all about, competitions to name the robot, having a party when your first robot goes live, trying to nurture automation ideas by coming up with ideas as objectives for your staff or giving rewards for good ideas where the robot's actually created. The very best, most mature RPA companies I've ever come across are really nailing this. RPA flyers are everywhere. There's an intranet page for the robots. They've got posters up. They've got their own branding for their robots, and it really gets people on board, and everyone in the company knows about it. So this is kind of a key thing. Bring your people on board, make it RPA fun, and that'll get some excitement about it. So, bit of a whistle stop there. I'm out of time. I'll just say that FD Intelligence, we kind of do the end-to-end for customers. We go from discover, we do the build, we do the managed service at the end. And yeah, we're looking for good partners and customers that really want to do this and really want to be successful. Okay, so Q&A time.
Hello, yes. So we would like to invite people to type questions into the Teams chat format, and then we'll gather and ask Dennis, who I think you'll all agree has just done a very strong job in introducing us to RPA, to answer some of them. I've also jotted down some from my own experience as being a recruiter for heat recruitment, in order to maybe ask some questions as well that may help with some questions that you may have. But we've got some coming through, so I'll hand over to Dennis. You can read them and answer them. Obviously not the top one.
Yeah. So what are the key technologies within the RPA space and how do they compare, please? So I'm not sure whether you're talking about the technologies in terms of the different RPA vendors or the technologies used within intelligent automation. So I'll probably say answer both. So in terms of the RPA vendors, okay. So I guess it's worth mentioning the key ones. in terms of RPA vendors. So you've kind of got UiPath, Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere. Microsoft's a big up and coming one, Pega. So Forrester and all those people do kind of good reports on this. For me personally, there's similarities but differences in the nuance. So the big three have kind of been going a long time, all of them. I think UiPath is probably the industry leader. The big difference with them is they've had more money and they've plowed more money into their wider intelligent automation tool set. So what you get is a more holistic, I think, platform from them. I think Blue Prism might be slightly better in terms of some historic things, in terms of object reuse and how easy that is, even though you can do it in all the other platforms. Automation Anywhere, for me personally, is probably the poorer relative of them. It can be some cheaper deals there. I think they're poorer than the other two in terms of, I mentioned this FD Intelligence's automation success playbook. I think UiPath and Blue Prism are slightly better in terms of that kind of operating model or framework and how they train their customers than Automation Anywhere. They're the main differences. Microsoft are coming up quick. In my recommendation would be to go for one of the big RPA vendors and go for Microsoft as well in terms of their Power Platform. Most of the companies, both partners and customers I know of now, are probably using UiPath or Blue Prism, and they're all using my Power Platform as well. So it can be a mix.
From a recruiter's point of view, I echo that. So the majority of the requests that I'm ever involved with are UiPath or Blue Prism. So yeah, that mirrors in if you're a candidate looking to get into, as some people are asking, how do I get into RPA as a sector myself? I think the UiPath and the Blue Prism qualifications, alongside speaking to myself, please make contact with myself about how to approach the market, and some introductions to clients my end as well can help you there. There's quite a few questions coming in thick and fast. One that I've written down is who's the most prestigious client? I'm assuming that's to you, that you've had the pleasure of working with.
Okay, well, I can't name names really. Some of the world's biggest banks, I guess. The biggest, when I worked for Blue Prism, I think our biggest licensed sales were probably about 3,000 robots. I think in reality, the biggest customers were maybe 1,000 plus, between 1,000 and 1,500 in terms of number of robots. One of the world's biggest banks, I can tell you how we're getting about £50 million worth of ROI annually out of their robots. So some really big customers, but most of them had really hard parts of their journey. I know one of those big customers, they almost stopped doing this after 18 months because they got started wrong. Not a great partner. Developers haven't done this before. So some of those recommendations at the start are kind of key, and also plan a long-term strategy and managing change well. I can't tell you how important that is. So a lot of the things I've touched upon are kind of the things I've seen that have gone wrong, and a lot of the biggest customers and the biggest names I've known that have kind of crossed the chasm into being really good at this. It was a journey for them, and they had to learn the lessons.
From the recruitment point of view, from myself, I've worked with a lot of large consultancies, as well as some specialists like FD Intelligence, and in turn, he is working with some pretty strong insurance businesses and financial institutions as well. So it seems to be quite prevalent in those areas, and we've both done some work with a major accountancy together as well. So there's a lot of crossover into finance and insurance.
Yeah. There's a question about what is the best approach to sell this to a team where some staff are at risk of disposal.
So that's the fear of
the
job.
No, I think you've got to be totally upfront with it from quite early on. And I know it sounds difficult. One of the very first projects that Blue Prism did many years ago, before I joined, the RPA developer was sat in the middle of an office with 90 people sat around him that were going to be made redundant. And you can imagine
a dartboard behind him.
Yeah, so sometimes there are redundancies. I mean, I think the reality for a lot of the organisations I'm dealing with at the moment, the problem is the opposite. They haven't got enough people, and RPA helps free people up. But if it is going to be, people are going to be at risk, be open with them. You might have other opportunities in your organisation. It might be that the role is just going to change. But I think you've got to be upfront and open, because the reality is they're going to know. If someone's coming in to automate their work, they're going to know they're at risk. So you've kind of got to get HR involved, and you've got to be upfront and honest and try and find other opportunities for them. And there will be other opportunities, if not in RPA, maybe more customer facing. You're driving up your productivity levels, you're driving down your costs. There's a business choice: is are you going to do more to make you a better company, or is this purely about cost saving? And if it's purely about cost saving, I think most of the companies I know that went purely for cost saving, if I sit back now, they're probably bigger companies now than they were 10 or 15 years ago when they started out on their RPA journey. So it's a difficult one, but be honest.
I'm there from Enrico.
Oh, Enrico, hello Enrico. It's been a while. He's been traveling, as my old friend. This question: as a seasoned Blue Prism developer, the market is seeking way more demand for UiPath skills, with the UK being pretty Blue Prism dominated in the past. Why do you think it's turned out that way? What's changed? It's an interesting one. It's definitely for me. So obviously I love Blue Prism. I'm working for a UiPath company at the moment in terms of an award-winning partner. I think it's the winner gets the spoils in a way. It's the UiPath are the industry leader on every score, and they've been that for 3 or 4 years. When you're selling a technology, most people that are purchasing it will look at the Forrester Gartner reports. They'll look at the market, and the leader will usually be the technology that you go for. That's why that's why Microsoft wins the operations, the OS space. That's why Salesforce is doing so well, and its shares are doing well at the moment. People will go for the most successful product as route one, often as the easy option. So Blue Prism is still a very good product, but there's a real battle in the sales teams there, I think, to kind of have a voice and to differentiate themselves. I think that's kind of, you've kind of got to say we're better because, and you've got to really differentiate yourselves. I think maybe they've not been doing that quite so well over the last few years. So they're kind of and if you don't differentiate yourself from UiPath, you're in a pot where UiPath is the leader. So I think the market in the UK has changed recently. Blue Prism still historically has got loads of customers, but I think UiPath seems to be, you're probably seeing at the coalface, seems to be
100%. Yeah, so I have a number of candidates who are Blue Prism who are asking, as someone has earlier in this trail, how do I get into UiPath, or how do I get into automation? And I am hand over fist recommending the UiPath route. That's not to say that if Blue Prism or Automation Anywhere or any other business brings out something that competes, that won't change, but UiPath is very prevalent at the moment for sure. There's a couple of questions that seem to have come through which are quite similar, so I've kind of paraphrased them. One of the questions that I think everyone's probably asking is, will AI replace RPA? Is it a threat to RPA?
That's a really good question. I think yes and no. So I think RPA is improving and getting better because of AI and machine learning technologies. It's able to, like I said on one of the earlier slides, it's able to do more. I think that's only going to accelerate. At the moment, I think the way of looking at it, the way I think it will go is, if you almost think AI can be the brain, but we've got all these systems where AI's got no input into it. So the key reason for RPA exists and will continue to exist because you need to enter the data into this system and get the data out of that system. The key need for RPA, it still exists, and it's actually getting worse. I think one of the slides I had, a point I didn't mention, was the number of apps that people are using in the workplace is accelerating. You switch between applications over 1,000 times a day. So the need for RPA is actually growing, but RPA should hopefully make RPA even better and easier to do. And I think that's the journey we're going to be on. I also think, this idea that you've got, AI is the brain, and the RPA are the hands of the brain that can actually do the work is quite a an amazing coupling there, I think. So I think in the medium term anyway, AI should mean more for RPA, and people will be doing more RPA, and RPA should get easier. So I think the relationship will be really good.
Okay, fantastic. There's a quite lengthy question there.
Okay.
One of the candidates. Let's have a look.
So, having spent a few years using RPA in the banking industry, I recently worked on a research in robotic automation and realized there are few academic researchers, and there is few academic research in the subject matter, which could be part of the reason it's still developing concepts in some industries. However, how can I get jobs to build my skills in robotic automation? Yeah, it's a good question.
There's one underneath. Sorry, there's one underneath as well about boot camps and
yeah,
how to get into it. So this might move in together. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can work. This might be more of a question for you. I'd say that you're 100% correct. I did my research paper, my MSc, on success factors in RPA, and I'll say that what I wrote then is out of date now. I'd write something totally different today. So I think part of the challenge is, even if there was the academic content, it would probably be 3 years out of date by now and constantly getting out of date, because this is such a fast moving industry. I'd aim you at the vendors themselves have very good online content as your first point of call. What would you say? So
from a point of getting into it, I mean, please message me direct, because it's a conversation in itself, and it's individual to each person. What I would say is, I get asked the question a lot: how do I transition into it? There are some large organisations which I can share with you, who are running boot camps, who are running sort of career switch type or IT switch type scenarios. I think most of the people we see successful from a recruitment point of view have had some form of software experience in the past, and then they've kind of moved into the RPA side of things. So I'm not trying to pass the buck here, but I think an individual conversation with each person that needs to know that. So if you email me, we'll set up a call and I'll explain, because it'll be different in different regions. I know we've got people from different parts of the world on this call. So let's have an individual chat around that. But there are routes in. It doesn't always have to be academic. So we'll try and help you find a way to find your way in to do into the sector, for want of a better term.
For the leaders out there, so obviously, FD Intelligence, we've got our automation success playbook, but there's also similar content online. If you go to Blue Prism, they've got their robotic operating model, which has been around for years. It's been refreshed recently. UiPath and Automation Anywhere have got their automation operating models, and they're all aimed at what you need to be successful outside of this all itself. So I'd probably point you at those, that content, in terms of, the kind of the tick list of how to manage this.
Okay, so I've got 2 more. Is there any more questions there? We have good scope on RPA platform. I understand that question.
Okay, so I think we're kind of there.
There's one that I wanted to ask. There's one that you mentioned to me earlier.
Yeah.
And it's one that I get asked a lot as well, so I'd like to get your take on it. Would an RPA project or an RPA team sit within the IT division?
Okay.
Or would they sit within the business or the back office? How would it look?
So, yeah. So this is probably one of the most
difficult,
most discussed topics, I think, in RPA. So, and if I say it's got to be in the business side, there's IT people on the call that will kind of be angry with me when I say IT. Business people say no, we were in business. So I would say, firstly, it kind of doesn't matter, so long as the organization it sits in is the best organization in the company at managing change, which is often IT. The problem if it's based in IT with a bigger organization is, one of the key business cases and reasons for having RPA is because IT has got this massive backlog of stuff that they've not got the resource to deliver.
They want to get through it.
And if you want to be really agile, RPA can really work if you embed it in the business where the problems are, and that can often be a quicker way of working, rather than it just be add to an existing backlog of IT. So there's pros and cons. It kind of depends on the organization. I'd say whoever's best at managing change, good leaders key, so wherever that exists. And in reality, if I think about the most mature organizations in terms of doing RPA on the customer side, you wouldn't really be able to tell looking at the RPA Center of Excellence whether they're in IT or whether they're in business.
So they're merged.
They become a kind of hybrid,
Right.
where you've got this really technical team that's really close to IT and might be part of IT or might be in the business, but they've kind of come to a level of maturity where, you know, they're like that with IT and the business, and they kind of end up in this hybrid place anyway. So maybe that is the end point to look.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, well, look, we've had a couple of questions around, can we send this out? Jamie, we definitely will do. And if you have any questions, please forward them to myself, and then I will share them with Dennis. If you want to speak to Dennis in more detail around any strategy or projects, then please feed that through myself, and I'll share that with Dennis. And equally, if you are looking to either get into this sector yourself, or if you are in need of hiring an individual to come in and maybe consult on this, then please also direct it via myself, and we'll get back to you, and the best fit person will come back to you, and we'll hopefully see you again in 3 months when we look at a different area of RPA and a different angle on it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.